Shalom, and welcome to the Remnant Radio Show, where we're living and learning a restoration lifestyle. Today, we have for you a tour of Biblical Tamar Park, which is out in the Negev Desert in Israel. And our guide is Ross Nichols. Ross Nichols volunteers at the park many times, several times a year, and he also does some interesting tours of Israel. You can reach Ross. He is part of, he does a weekly show and United Israel World Union, and that website is unitedisrael.org if you're interested in that. And he does, I think, a Christian tour and like a more centered Jewish tour each year. But he did a really awesome tour for us there at Biblical Tamar Park, which is an archaeological dig. It's the ancient trade routes, spice trade route place there in the desert. And you can actually look across, if you know what you're looking for, and see Bozrah. Which again, you'll hear me talk more and more. I actually did a newsletter article on it several months ago, but Bozrah is a place that's going to be very important in the future for God's people in the remnant of Israel. I believe it's part of where the sheepfold will go. And so, yeah, you want to watch this Biblical Tamar Park video and tour that Ross Nichols gave us, and we're just very excited for that. May your garments always be white, and may your head lack no shemen as you watch this guide with Ross Nichols. Thank you.
So part of the reason that we're changing things around in stages is because we're getting ready. We don't want buses to stop there. We want them to flow naturally through not only the Garden of the Ages, but these different periods, these 7 periods. And so we want them first to go to the Abrahamic period, which is what we're going to do. And then throughout our little walk around, as Cynthia has things that she wants to explain, we'll sort of tag team and give you both. So,
yep, and one more thing. Part of the garden committee will be beautifying this whole area, and we'll have little token plants of different ages right here at the Welcome Center. And then before we go to the Abraham, I want to go to the Garden of the Ages and then one of our projects. Okay. Then we'll go. Is that okay?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Okay, where you're standing is the future Garden of the Ages.
Oh, I see.
And one of our projects that we really would like to have completed before we go up to Jerusalem is this plant right here. I don't know what it is, but we have to remove these from here and here and here. And then over number 7, we have to replant these. It might take a couple big guys shoveling all the way around. And remember, these aloe veras are very, very sharp. They could injure you. But this is what we were bringing the dirt for. What happened was, a number of years ago, they were going to move number 7 up there and kind of make a wind block, kind of behind where the new laundry room is, where those hammocks are back there, the faces. But they, yeah, don't prick yourself.
No.
So anyway.
I love it.
That got that was like washed off. So there were plants around there, and they got removed. So Dr. Coxon would like to have this, and this moved over there.
And you have to remember the aloe vera grown 4 feet wide. So when you plant it, you have to plant it out.
Right. And so even if we have time, we can walk around the whole park and take babies, and just kind of plant them at different places. But see, this one's not even finished growing. Now back over here, guys, we don't want to have to take trees out. That's kind of a bad thing in Israel. But 30 years ago, they just kind of put trees in here. We will be taking trees out in the fall, and then we are working with a garden planter to be able to plot. Part of my job is of the 2,500 plants that grow in Israel is to link them with the scripture and the periods of time. So because of my work and my research and such, I'm the research girl to put together Abraham the tamarisk and Moses and the frankincense and all that stuff. Okay. Now, as far as funding goes, we need separate funding from the museum or just maintenance of the park. But anyway, here it's going to be, and then inside of here, just like what we've got memorials for people who's passed on, and they've got the picture of their loved one, little benches and pretty little places for people to come and meditate and that kind of thing. Here we're hoping that, first of all, those are the 12 tribes with those kind of memorials. After those are all filled, in this area we're going to have the 12 disciples and little benches. And then over here against the wall here is going to be like the whole beautiful area. So that you're standing at the future Garden of the Ages, okay?
So welcome, come into the Abraham's tent. I'll explain a little bit about this. So we want to start, we kind of came in from the back way. We have signage over here that describes that you're entering into the Abrahamic period. What we want to do is, if you think biblically, like you might say, well, was Abraham here? Well, one thing that we know is when you look at Genesis chapter 14, 13 and 14, remember in 13, Abraham and his nephew Lot are talking about, Abraham says, look, the land's not going to support both of us, and you make a choice, and wherever you go, I'll go the other way. So the interesting thing is, we don't know exactly where Sodom and Gomorrah are. Mm-hmm. There are different opinions. Some say north, some say south, but it's around the Dead Sea. And remember, Lot looks out over the Jordan Valley, and he chooses that area because it's lush and so forth. It's not right now in that particular area where Sodom and Gomorrah were, but nonetheless, he makes a choice. So we know that somewhere in this Rift Valley, somewhere close to the Dead Sea, at least Abraham was in this. Generally, most of the stories of Abraham take place to the west, by Beersheba and so forth. But nonetheless, so we want to talk about Abraham because the vision, it's through Abraham that this messianic vision will come to pass, right? Everybody believes this, Jews, Christians, and so forth. So what we did, our Bedouin, Muhammad, this is an actual Bedouin tent. It's made the way they've made them for many, many years. It's made out of goat hair. And you'll notice the different colors. These are the natural colors of the goat. You can feel it. It's pretty coarse. Not camel. No, it's goat. And so this, one of the projects that Toby and I did this summer, we installed this. You can see it's put up really well. Thanks, Ross and Toby. But we put this up and it's secure and it will withstand the winds. But the idea is that people can come in. Now, they didn't obviously have this nice couch and these mattresses, but we wanted to create a sort of an ambiance. People can come in and enjoy the desert and come out of the wind a little bit. So this represents Abraham. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a step around and we're going to go into the Mosaic period. We go from Abraham and then the Mosaic period with Moses. Each of these areas, by the way, are sponsored by various groups. So, for instance, a certain church group or a certain congregation might say, you know what, or an individual might say, I want to sponsor that, and they provide funding, and that's the case with each of these areas. So, for instance,
you're constantly having people who want to do that.
Yeah,
and it's open, so
it's open. No, it's always open, and we're always looking for people who want to sponsor. And so, like this, there's a group in Poland known as the Bible Students. Some of you are familiar with the Jehovah's Witnesses, with Judge Rutherford. Well, before Judge Rutherford, before the Jehovah's Witnesses, there was a particular Bible teacher who named Russell, and he was very pro-Israel, pro-Zionist, not anything like what became of his movement, but the Russellites sometimes are called. But these people in Poland really fell in love with the place, and they purchased this high-tech screen print, and what you're going to see inside is what they came, not only did they fund it, but they came and installed it. So this represents the period in the wilderness with Moses and the children of Israel. So step inside and you'll see it. Surrounded by verses associated with the tabernacle here. Notice the passages on the wall deal with what we call the tabernacle or the Mishkan. And in Hebrew, the word Mishkan indicates, some of you have heard of the, as we say in the South, the Shekinah, but it's in Hebrew it's the Shekhinah, the dwelling, And so the Mishkan is a place of dwelling. It was designed, Exodus chapter 25, 8 and 9, God tells Moses, make for me a holy place, and I will dwell in the midst of you. So the idea of the tabernacle is a place where God would meet with his people, and there would be communion. So this is a model, obviously, of the tabernacle. The group from Poland, the Bible students, put this together and set it up. The idea, very good. We wanted a way to protect it from the elements. So the initial thought was we would use plexiglass type to cover it. Sounds great, but we get a lot of sand here, as you can imagine. So when the sand covers it, it's a little bit difficult to keep clean because you can't, if you wipe it, you scratch it. So, people might want to write, wash me, please don't, because it doesn't help us out. But we try to blow it off first with compressed air, and then we rinse it with water. And it keeps it somewhat clean, but we're still in the thinking mode on this. But I think most of you are familiar. You can read the book of Exodus covers quite extensively the erection of the tabernacle in the wilderness. And so we wanted to kind of give people this idea that this is the period. And as I told you last night, I believe that not very far from here, in fact, I believe that there was a passing of the children of Israel very close to this location. I would even argue as a theory that they came to this area. So it's very interesting that we have this. All right?
So I got one thing to say.
Yep.
Okay, so during the course of my time being here, we have a lot of big tour groups coming in, so you get to meet the tour guides and such. And they're telling us over and over again how much they like to come here and be able to show all of Jewish history and don't have to go like long drives. Now we do just 2 hours down the road at Remnant Park. We have the full tabernacle and the Moses, but they can't show you Abraham. They can't show you this. They can't show you the Israelite period. So they're becoming more and more. So there was a tour guide here just about a week ago. And I showed him the new road. He goes, I love this place. I always bring people here. He goes, and I see your improvement and I see your love of Israel here.
Yeah.
So anyway, you can come and you can do a small tour here with so much history, and they don't have to go from place to place to place.
Exactly.
Kind of like mini Israel. If mini Israel, you can stand in one place and say, "Oh, I've been to Caesarea, whatever." It's all explainable. Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make that point.
Yeah, no, very good point. And like you're going to see as we go to the archaeology here, we cover all the periods, from 8th, 9th, 10th century BCE, the time of the kings, all the way up through the modern era of Israelite history. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to walk out of here. We're going to go to the archaeology, and it gets a little bit more difficult in there to go strictly by periods. Because you'll see as I explain this wall is from this period and so forth, a little bit more difficult, but stay with me and we'll get the full tour. So, all right, so let's walk out here to the Israelite period of what we call an ancient Israelite 4-room house. So this area where Cynthia is in right now is somewhat of a courtyard. Now there's been restoration here. So like this wasn't in situ. This wasn't the way it was discovered when it was uncovered. It was restored. It was built up. But this is the idea. It's to give you an idea of the restoration of this particular 4-room house. It's known throughout Israel. There is a diagram in one of the rooms I'll try to bring out later so you get an idea. It's hard to imagine. But it would have been built up. There would have been a roof over it. And in some cases, they even had 2 stories. So these were, really nice dwellings. This type of house dates to about the 7th century BCE. So the 600s, we're talking time of Josiah, the good king from 2 Kings 23. But this is sort of the idea. Now, Cynthia mentioned earlier when we're talking about the archaeology here, we'll need to get the grass. This is one of the areas. You see this grass? It comes up pretty easily with a hoe. You just kind of scrape it and we'll toss it out and then we'll carry it off. But this is I kind of like it. The grass looks pretty, but no, we don't want the
know.
grass in it.
But people didn't have grass when it was a house.
Yeah, they didn't have it in their house, right? Exactly.
That was Dr.
Yeah.
Cox's comment, if they can come in here. We will need a couple shovels and rakes.
Oh yeah, we've
Okay.
got all the tools we need. But so this, just to kind of give you an idea of the dating. So we're talking 7th century BCE. Now I'm going to show you from the same period something else that I think is quite phenomenal. It's here, and it's sort of one of our claims to fame. Cynthia mentioned tens of thousands of artifacts that were discovered. This one is one of my favorites. So we're going to walk past some really cool stuff, but we'll come back to it. We're going to go see something else from the 7th century BCE.
Oh yes, I'd like to.
Now, look, I want to show you how the weather sometimes plays in our favor. Remember, we're below sea level, and Jerusalem is 2,400 feet above sea level. So when we have flash flooding, the waters come down through the wadis, and just this last year, this was exposed. We didn't even know it was here.
Huh.
Now, what is this?
Wow.
What are we looking at? Can you tell? Does anybody know archaeology and they know what we might be looking at?
An aqueduct?
It is an aqueduct. Give that man a bonus
The
point.
channel in between.
Yep.
Wow.
So this is an ancient aqueduct. It has not been excavated. We don't know, details about it. It would take good studies in archaeology to determine exact date and so forth. But I think this is amazing. It's just an example of what lies directly under the surface. We don't know, until we really do archaeology, what's there. But
That could be 5 years from now. It could be next year.
or the Israeli Antiquities Authority may say, you know what, we're not even going to deal with this.
Yeah.
It's not what we're focused on. They can quickly make a small sampling and determine that it's an era that they're not interested in exploring deeper at this point.
Have they been contacted?
Oh yeah, they're the ones that showed me. So when I was here,
Was it
Yoram Jaime is one of the archaeologists, and he said, "Oh, have you seen my aqueduct?" And I thought he was talking about another one, and I said, I have. I've been here forever. And he goes, "No, I'm talking about just recently."
The new one.
Yeah. So. So
And
that's
then what
they
else he said was this, right after the flood, he said, this was new, this was exciting, but our main thing right now, it's a flood came through, is to preserve this place. Okay?
Yeah.
That was one of his words.
Yeah,
May or
archaeologists
June.
do a couple of things. They can do rescue archaeology. They can do, they might do preservation. They do all these sorts of things. So we're going to go up here. So the archaeologists were really excited about this find. What you're looking at is what has been determined by archaeologists to be an Edomite shrine. Now you go, well, that's kind of strange. What would an Edomite shrine be doing so close to a fortress in Judah?
Yeah.
So remember, these are at different periods. So this is 7th century BCE. This is the time of Josiah. And one of the things that's so remarkable about this is that when they uncovered it, they discovered all sorts of cultic objects associated with worship. So there were incense burners, and they were clearly identified as Edomite in origin. Now remember, the other day I told you that from where we're standing now, modern Jordan is directly to my east, right? Or to the east. So what we have here is Edom. If you look at any biblical map, it shows Edom to the east and to the south of Judah. All right, so when we talk about these passages I mentioned last night about Yehovah is coming from Seir, from Edom, from Bozrah, it's in this region. It's from Edom. So Edom and Judah have sort of a troubled history. Sometimes we think that we can find evidence that they were trading one between the other. At times they were at war. Various kings of Judah set up and fought wars with the Edomites. But at any rate, this was determined to be an Edomite shrine. These standing stones are forbidden in the Torah, actually, in terms of associated with worship. But these matzevah, they're called, these standing stones, were set up at idolatrous places of worship. So this is kind of an icky place, you know. It's kind of like it's associated with pagan worship, you might say.
What time period did you say?
7th century
Same
BCE.
time period?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah. And it's interesting because both was in the same latitude, and it was the capital of Edom.
Yeah, that's right. Now, the other interesting thing is when they found these objects of worship, there's a difference. Archaeologists can determine if things were just crushed by the sands of time versus smashed. And what they discovered was that these items were smashed. You know, like, remember in 2 Kings 23 when Josiah, as a young boy, and he grows up and he sets out on this revival, if you will, across the land, one of the things that he does is they destroy these idolatrous places of worship. So even minimalist scholars who go, oh, I'm not sure this even happened, they're going, well, it's Edomite, it dates to the time of the 7th century BCE, and anyone with any common sense or biblical knowledge will go, let's see. What happened in the 7th century BCE? A great revival in the land, a destruction of all the idolatrous places of worship. So this is one of the biggest pieces of evidence of that biblical veracity. And the other thing is that if you go to the Israeli Museum, the Israel Museum, you'll find this a replica set up exactly like this with those objects that have been restored. They've glued them back together, and it's pretty cool.
Which is a
From here.
possibility that Monday afternoon on the way to the airport we may stop so you can see the Dead Sea Scrolls and this.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's just kind of like in the
It's in an
it's in
iffy
there.
category.
Yeah, iffy
Gotcha.
category.
Is there any archaeological evidence of shrines or worship altars up there on that prayer mountain?
No.
They ever
not,
done that?
I'm not saying there aren't any, but they've not done any archaeology there. 2 archaeological dig seasons were conducted in this area. One was from 87 to 96. The other was from 2005 to 2009, all focusing on this area and the identification of this as an Edomite shrine and this as an Israelite fortress were discovered during those 2 dig seasons. So up on Prayer Mountain, there's been no archaeology that I know of.
So the artifacts found here
Yep.
specifically are in the Israel Museum.
Absolutely.
So would you be able to one day to bring them back here when you're
That's
set
what
up?
Oh, that's
Cynthia
part-
was
yeah.
saying part of our goal and our prayer is that if we get a suitable location, that we could then appeal to the government to say we now have a place to put those. We'd like to bring them back.
And just like we've been entrusted to, to develop and maintain and beautify this property, that won't be hard once we have a house for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know,
You can-
right now they're being housed, and it really is kind of interesting because the incense and all things that I do, to see the different shapes of all the incense burners and all of that, and so we can actually show you a picture, but that was where it was right here.
I have in my photos, I took a photo of this and a photo of what's on display at the Israelite Museum, and I put them side by side so you can see, and I'll pull that up later and show it to you. Go back and fix that, which we intend to do, but I don't know exactly where. Now,
It's at least the bottom, no?
oh yeah, the outline and much of these towers is authentic, but there has been restoration.
It's a better view actually over there.
But you'll notice, see, these are cutouts, like, different theories, but, if you're fortifying an area, there would be a gate, obviously, but this is it's called a 4-chambered gate, and these are chambers. Now, look, see all this fill here? We haven't excavated this out. We haven't pulled this out, but it's there. It provides stability to the wall. So you don't want to pull all that out. Yeah.
So all of that is filling.
Yeah, it's
That's
fill.
filled
It's
in
just
over
through the
here. That would
ages.
be down
This-
to the ground like this.
Exactly. And this can go deeper as well.
Oh.
So if you notice, we're on sort of an incline. I wouldn't do it this way. You would do this with like mussels and wheelbarrows, but you would dig all this out. But if you were to take the tractor, we can't, but if you took the tractor and just lowered the scoop and scooped it out, you could bring it down to the level that it was, and there's no telling how far down.
Or what would be found.
Yeah, no doubt. So we find incredible things here.
This will be removed?
I don't know. It depends on what the archaeologists determine. Right now, as I said, it's primarily for security. You don't want, I mean, it's helping those walls stay stable. Now, what we know and what we're speculating on, I'll try to keep those distinct. I'll tell you what we know versus what we don't know. Now, something that's strange that stands out, you stay here and look. Look at this. And look at the difference in the stones and versus this.
Yeah.
Now, it's also in an odd location. Like you come into this major fortress and you're like, hey, what's up with the wall right in the middle of things? This wall, according to the archaeologist, is part of the original, the most ancient fortress. Originally, the fortress was determined to date roughly to the 10th century BCE. This takes us back to the earliest period of the monarchy. 1 Kings 9:18 says that Solomon built up Tamar in the wilderness. So could this be? It could very well be. It's considered to be a fortress of Judah. It was originally 50 by 50, but we only have unearthed. Notice how later periods come and build onto existing walls. Like you're not going to come, it's in like remodeling your kitchen. You're not going to come in and go, okay, boys, I want this whole wall torn down and we're going to rebuild it. I like this color stone better. You know, it's not like changing the linoleum in your bathroom. So you use existing structure, and this is solid. I mean, 10th century, right? But this is considered the most ancient wall. Again, notice all the fill. This wall, this tower, come up where you can see how it's leaning. Everyone knows, archaeology has shown this, and geologists and studies in geology have shown, there was a major earthquake in the land of Israel. There have been several. We're on a fault line. In 363 AD, or Common Era, CE. And a lot of places suffered great destruction with this earthquake. Beit Shean is one of the sites. It's a great late Roman period site, and it was in shambles after this earthquake. It literally shook the entire land of Israel. And we believe that this is when this particular lean happened, from 363. We'll get to it a little bit more when we get to the Roman period. But after 363, that sort of ends the Roman occupation in this area. Now, from here, as we walk through, there's a mixture of ancient and then a little bit later. And when I say ancient, I'm talking, you know, well before the Common Era. Like, this is 10th century BCE. The fortress was expanded to 100 by 100, roughly in the 8th to 9th century BCE. So we're talking from King Ahaz on down, right? So there have been several expansions. I'm not as knowledgeable as we walk through of going, okay, this is exactly from this period. It's not because I'm ignorant totally of the area, but it's because there's so much speculation. You know, there's one really good academic article that I can make sure that you get a copy of about the archaeology here, and there's a lot of guessing going on, right? So it becomes difficult, I think, for some. Now, one thing that I want to show you, if you walk this way, now watch your step. We don't have OSHA regulations here, so. I actually worked on this part. This is considered to be some of the most ancient as well. Look at the difference in the stones here versus the more uniform stones here. This is almost like you pick up the rocks from the area and you make walls with it, right? Now notice this. I was here when we got to this point in the archaeology, and we left it in the wall. But what does that look like to you? If you had to guess, what is this room? If you were an archaeologist, what is this? What do you think? Anybody have a guess?
This was 2017, fall of 2017.
What you think about it? Any ideas?
I know.
What's that?
Toilet? There you go.
What is it?
What?
She said toilet.
Well, some have said that. Some think, though, that it might be sort of a grinding, like you would grind either incense or spices or something associated with cooking. what is this? It could be associated with cooking as well, right? So there are different ideas, but archaeologists are back and forth on this. Now maybe the year before, in this area here, one of the ladies that was digging found a glass bead, like for jewelry, that they dated to, I think they initially dated it to like the 12th century BCE, and it was Egyptian in origin. So
And she's a lady on our board too. It was thrilling.
yeah, very exciting stuff. So we don't know what all is held there. But notice, we're going to walk on this level here. Look how we're 6 feet down, and we're hitting this here. So what's below? You know, how long has this been occupied? And we haven't really got to the bottom of these walls. But you can just see that you can tell when you're digging, you go, oh, I'm hitting rocks, oh, here's loose ground, and you just find the wall as you dig down. Same with that side. So we begin to make shapes as we get all the fill out. Archaeology's hard work. If you ever volunteer for these, it's not all glamour like, look, I found a coin, you know. Like my job on archaeology is always buckets and wheelbarrows. And when someone finds something and they say, oh, I just found a coin, and I go, I want to see, and they're like, no, you keep doing the wheelbarrow. We'll show it to you later. We'll show you over a glass of wine tonight.
That's right, and I feed you.
So that's the way it goes. So we're going to walk out here, just careful if you're going that way.
What is that piece of? Is that a piece of wood?
Yep. Yep.
Over here.
And it could have been a tree and the roots went down into the wall, you know, but there's no telling. I mean, I guess they could date it, maybe doing carbon dating, I don't know.
Look at the line in the stone right there.
But see, notice this is another wall of some sort. You know, where does this go? Is it, again, you put together clues as you're unearthing this. So a lot of this is yet to be uncovered. The trick is going to be, what do we want to uncover? You know, how it costs money. I mean, resources, people.
Well, tell them, Ross, then tell them how the sponsorship works. You know, right?
What's that? On which part?
Anytime you have a dig in Israel, it has to have a sponsorship. It's not paid for by Israeli IAA.
Taxes?
Right. So Blossoming Rose has always funded every dig here. No outside anything. So the people who believe in this place have funded the digs. And they're not cheap. Because you've got really basically what you're paying for is the salary of those who can identify what they found here and all those things. And then it's volunteers that come who pay their own way, their own insurance, their whole everything.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not the government here that pays.
Now, while we're here, I'll just show you this aqueduct. It runs down into, we pass by, it's late, the aqueduct and this trough. This is sort of a trough. See the aqueduct here? Right here? It runs all the way down into this, you see it's late. It's from, some people say that it was restored with the concrete during the British period. There's Arabic writing on it. So Bedouin tribes and so forth would use this to feed their, to get their camels water. Because remember, at a certain point we had an active well here, a spring, that fed water from the ground, and so people would come here for the water.
Well, can you show us where that spring was?
Well, again, we're almost there. We're going to look at that in a few moments, but there's a little bit of speculation. Some say at the roots of the tree, somewhere close to the tree. But it's up here on this tell, so it's not active now, but we can talk about that. I want to take you next to the Roman period. Now this is a Roman camp. Romans lived it up. Even in a distant place, even in a place where, you're far away from family, you're stationed sort of in the middle of the desert, that most of the Roman camps are built in a similar layout. So soldiers could be stationed here, they might be in the Galilee, they might be in Europe, wherever they are, it's pretty much the same. Military posts are the same. So where are you at right now? Look, I tell you what, let me show you this. Look, do you mind? Sit right here for me. Sit right there. All right. How about you? Take a seat right there. Watch those rocks. That's not very comfortable. You see what they're doing? This is what we might call a sweat room, an exercise room. The soldiers would come in here. You'll see the seats around the outside, and they would sit here. This is an exercise floor. So some of you that made a New Year's resolution, you didn't stick to it, I want to see you out here today. You're going to do your side straddle hops, your push-ups. They would work up a really good sweat, and then they would scrape their skin, you know, sort of wipe the, like an exfoliant, you know, just kind of scrape their skin. And then they would go into this next area. Now, it's better to see from up top, but this is a Roman bath in this area here. And you'll see the way it was set up was it had layers of the floor. Underneath the floor, there are places where you would build a fire, and then water would be splashed on, and it would cause steam. So this is like a sauna. I mean, these boys are living it up, right? And you'll be able to see the different kind of bricks and layered in there, and that's what this is. It's a Roman bath. And it really looked nice before the flood. Now you'll see that it's really in bad shape right now.
Actually, it's in better shape because the team came in here.
It is better, but it's still bad. It's worse than it was. We had it really looking nice. But there has been some work. In fact, one of the boys that came this summer took this as a special project. There were 6 inches of debris and mud on this, and he came in single-handedly and cleaned all this in the heat of the summer. His name is Evan. So God bless Evan for his hard work.
Bless his heart.
Now,
Treasury.
Yeah, I'm going to do that in a minute. Now, the other thing is there's a bathroom here, and I'm going to encourage you not to use this one, but because somebody's got to clean up after you. There are better examples of this in the ancient world. I want to demonstrate, not demonstrate like go to the bathroom, but see this right here, if you can get in here. Beit Shean is a really good example of this, but the way there's a trough system where water would run through here, and there would be another, it looks similar to a modern toilet, and you would just straddle this, you know, and go to the restroom, and water would flow, and that's what a bathroom. Of course, this is not a very good. Here's another. So this might have been in here at one point where a person could sit like that. You get the picture.
Yes,
all right?
yes.
So that's what this is. Now, in the ancient world, they would use a stick attached to leaves. They didn't have good toilet paper like we have, but that's what they would do. Right? So, now you have a crude picture to get out of your mind for the rest of the day. And most people would say, I think I'll just go at the house. Thank you very much. All right, so that's what this is in through here. Now, I want you to, we're going to go out the way we came and just get up on this platform so you can see down into the Roman bath. So if you can see these little coves here, see how the bricks sort of form an archway? So what they would do is fires would be built there, and there's a floor covering so that the people would come in here, and then the water would be splashed, and it would create this steam bath effect. And you'll see all these little coves here where the fires would go. Now, I don't know who in their right mind, I've been here all seasons of the year, and I'm not sure I would ever want a steam bath, but I don't know.
I actually explained the 3 chambers here in my Esther book.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good. So you get kind of a picture of it, and now you can see from above the exercise area, and then you would come into the bath area. Again, Beit Shean has a real good example of the bath area. And
Yep.
now we're going to go see, I'm going to show you a Roman treasury. Every Roman camp had a place where they kept the money. Yep.
And frankincense.
Yep.
So this here, this Roman period is after the fortress ancient
Exactly.
period. So when they built here, was that already undercover?
We don't know how much of it was exposed versus how much was uncovered. We do know that there, in ancient places where you have various strata, various level of occupation, they will sometimes use the materials from a previous to build what they want to build. So they could have pulled down stones from the tower or from the walls and said,
And use
you know,
them, sure,
hey guys,
recycled.
we got to build a bath. Where are we going to get rocks? And you're like, well, my goodness, man, they're right there. Go get some. So they would take from one. So it's kind of
Recycle.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
Reuse.
what people do when archaeologists come in, one of the greatest challenges is what happened here. How do we look at an ancient site and reconstruct it? You know, it's like under the grass, under the sand is all this history, and we kind of have to piece it together. So we know that the Romans were here like 2nd and 3rd century, and then on into up until 363, and then we kind of have evidence that that was it.
Any
Yep.
evidence that the Romans occupied the fort? Were they,
They
not?
did.
They did.
Oh, yeah.
They occupied the
Absolutely.
fort, and this was extra.
In fact, one of the things that we know is that the Romans are good about getting taxes.
Yep.
You know, giving to Caesar the things that are Caesar's. In Rome, you know, they're good at this. So they have a tax station, and the military garrison is here. We know this from the church father Eusebius. We know it from other historical accounts. And then up on Ma'ale Akrabim, the cross that I told you about, the place where you would cross over before there was a Highway 90, you had to pass this way. So you would pass. We know that there's a Roman road up here, and it was, and there's a post there. So they had to come through here, and they would also have to cross through Ma'ale Akrabim, where we have another tax station there. So you can see, in fact, with the latest flood, I don't know if you can see this here directly in front of me. See all the stones like between me and that telephone pole? You see that platform there? So that is believed to be a Roman road that is built on top of an older Roman road. A British road built on top of an older Roman road. And it goes all the way out. You can see where it caved in, you know.
So over here, just past those watch posts, they believe that was just the distance. And so the guard could say, they paid their taxes, they're coming in. They have no frankincense, they can't come in. And they would then be able to come and get their bath. But it's just, they would be able to just hear it right from here. And you can walk out that way, guys. And then this dirt right here, that's part of the berm they've put since the flood.
Yeah.
And yeah, to try to, you know, if we have another 100-year flood like we did
A
before.
little bit of a, yeah,
Protect.
protection. This area in front of us is where I walk. Usually in the evenings, the sun is too bright during the day. But in the evenings, you see this iron post that runs like a, you know, up and down. To the left of that, and before you get to the palm trees, that's the area where I find a lot of the Roman glass and artifacts.
And if it rains, go
Yeah,
on out there.
directly over here, past the archaeology site. Like it's illegal. We can't go in the site. Like let's say you're walking around and you're looking for pottery. We don't do that on an archaeology site. Off the site, you know, if you're walking around and you see pottery shards and stuff, that's a different game. But inside, you know, it's just not acceptable.
They want to know where it was
Yeah,
found.
exactly. You want provenance. You want to know where did this come from, and it helps us to date. So even if you see like something really cool and it's just on the surface, you can take a photo, let me or Cynthia know, we'll contact the Israeli Antiquities Authority. Because you don't want to disturb an active dig site, you know, because it helps them date.
Well, our volunteer agreement says that we will not.
Yeah,
But out there, we're outside the dig.
yeah.
How
Out
far
this
does the
road.
property go here?
We have 53 acres total,
Which way?
and this is sort of an inside barrier, but there's actually an outer ring of trees that
That's what
notates
this
the
place
boundary.
Okay.
So you can see that, you know, if you feel like you want to take a long walk or something. So all of this is part of the Roman camp here. And various levels of occupation, you know, what we call the Roman, quote, Christian period is what it's designated in the brochure.
And you have no idea what really is under that ground right there. There could be more.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We don't know here as well.
Uh-huh.
Like, it could be under the trees, you know. We don't know how far it goes because, you can see the level where we've restored this wall. Now when I say restore, I don't mean we just make it up, like we just build something and say this is what was here. It's easy to determine as you begin to dig. I'll give you an example. Let's walk this way and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about, because I put the rocks back up here. I know this part. 2010. What we know, the archaeologists, there are various specialties within the Israeli Antiquities Authority, and one is designed for what's called restoration. So they know how the ancients produced mortar, and so they make it in similar ways so that you're not like using modern techniques. Like we actually take sand and we mix it and we do it just like they did it. When we got to this point in 2010, one of our projects was to take the rocks, like you could tell this like fell over. And so we had to then kind of put the rocks. It's almost easy to do. It was pretty, like you just pick the rocks up, you put them back in the next layer, like a puzzle, and you get them organized where they fit together. Now, maybe this rock was actually here when the Romans first did it, but it's okay, right? It's not that picky. But the idea is to use the same material to put it back together. As I recall, the initial assessment of this area, this was believed to be a stable. That the Romans would have horses and so forth. So, but look, you can look. See here. Here's a portion of a wall. You can look underneath the dirt, underneath the fill. There's more. This is. And any time you see, we call it a tell. Tell means a hill, basically. So whenever you see a hill, sort of an anomaly, like you're looking out and you're like, what's that hill doing there? A lot of times, right underneath the soil is an ancient city or an ancient fortress or something just waiting to be uncovered. The land of Israel is just speckled with these ancient sites, and that's how we find it. An archaeologist goes, maybe, for instance, someone might read the Bible and say, we believe it happened here, and you go there and you begin to dig and you get sponsors and, they make an initial assessment and somebody gets behind it financially. So now we're at the place here at Biblical Tamar where we have to make some determinations. Do we want to preserve all of this? You can see one flood totally wiped out a lot of work. So there is some talk, and no one gasped, but there's some talk that some of this will be covered. That they'll take good measurements, they'll take excellent photos, and just to preserve it, they'll just cover it up.
That's typical.
And because maybe they want to focus on the ancient fortress. Maybe they want to. Now, my guess is that they would leave the Roman bath and all exposed and really get it in good shape. Perhaps cover it. Now, one other thing before we walk off, we're going to walk right here and look at the treasury. And a lot of this looked a lot better before the flood, but you can see how the water eroded and it actually flashed in here. What we have here is a Roman treasury. Now this wall behind the arch, because you would think, why would you have an arch and go right into a wall? The wall is a retaining wall that was put up by archaeologists just to keep it from caving in. So this is yet to be fully explored. But this is somewhat the way it would look. The archway has been restored, but again, it's easy to do when you find the stones in place and you put it back together. So this is somewhat a representative of what that would look like. And the way they got us to do it, I was on this part too, and I remember Dwayne, he said, we always find gold coins here. And of course, then me and a couple of guys are like digging frantically, and
But you couldn't keep them anyway.
We found a couple of scorpions, and nothing like gold coins, but it got us to work anyway. So hats off to Dwayne; he's good at that.
Well, this is amazing because they didn't have a computer to engineer this.
Right. Yep.
And the thing is, the flood, there's another little bit of a layer down here that they did uncover.
Yeah. And
then they built these steps up to make it safe for people to go down. But this was definitely the treasury. And I was told this is a very unusual one. There's only one like it in the whole world, and that's in England.
Huh.
Oh.
Yeah, again, that goes to the point. A lot of times these Roman camps were set up in, similar fashion. Now, why would you need a treasury in the desert? Remember, you're taking taxes. You've got people coming up from Egypt and from Saudi Arabia on the spice route, and you got to go through Rome, see? So you come through Rome, you pay your taxes. The Romans are like, hey, I'm going to the bath anyway. I'll drop it at the treasury. So that's what we have. Now we're going to walk up to our beautiful tree and talk about that area there, and then we'll ease up into more modern era. Generally, this thin redware, Romans they're really good at this. I mean, they have class, right? So Roman pottery is generally this thin redware. So this dates to, the early centuries. So this is, roughly 1900 years old, pieces like this.
This too?
Yep. So the thin redware, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you'll find pieces with character on it, like some, as you walk around, I'll show you the difference as I find it. But you'll see all of this here, all of this.
So this
is Roman
Oh, look, an
pottery.
ancient sandal.
Yeah, hey, that's my shoe.
How do you
That's my
Oh,
Look,
shoe. You were looking for that?
Wait a minute.
oh, that's funny.
feel
No, it's
this.
not my-
See, it's
no.
got texture
An
to
animal
it.
took my
Right.
shoe, one shoe, off my porch.
How'd you get it?
And then
so
now the
shiny?
second shoe
What's
is
this
gone.
tumbler thing?
They must have
What?
smelled the
These, would
food
these shine up?
and decided.
I don't
but
know.
no.
I don't know. Yeah, it's,
Save
This
those and
one
put
is
oil on them.
Purposely
can.
almost shaped, right? Look
Oh.
how
And
so you'll see it everywhere though.
Yeah, it is.
Like look, I'm walking. See all this red? All over the place.
So this is what you're saying, Roman pottery,
Yeah, it's Roman pottery.
as opposed to Roman glass. Which is green.
Right. The Roman glass, I'll show you. It's generally here we find sort of a green, and there are a couple of excellent videos on YouTube about ancient glass making. And you saw our tree in the video.
What is this, Roman pottery? Roman pottery.
Yep. So in the video, our tree talked. Our tree doesn't actually talk, or I've never heard it. Estimates on the age of the tree vary. You have minimalist and maximum in tree guessing too. But according to this sign, some believe that it's 1,000 years old. In 1902, there's a photograph, and the circumference of the tree measured 3.5 meters. So they really, they're estimating that it could easily be 900,000 years old. Minimalists say, it's only 400 or 500 years old. But some of the same minimalists don't believe anything. It's like, minimalist to me, it's like, come on, man. I mean, at least, be reasonable, but sometimes they're not.
So at least it's over 500 years.
Yes, at the minimalist view. But I believe that it's probably older. I'm not a tree expert, but just based on what I've read.
Yeah, it looks...
Again, we have stories early in Israelite history, and there's stories about this tree that go back quite a ways. We know when Lawrence of Arabia, this is late, but Lawrence of Arabia, the famous explorer, he mentions that when he's on the road with his troops, he hears the rushing of the stream and brings his troops here. And according to one source, I heard that he actually mentions the tree here. So
What
Tamar,
type of tree is this?
it's called a jujube.
Jujube.
It's also known as a spina crista. I guess it's
So
scientific.
it's the
name.
oldest in Israel?
It is.
And is it also one of the oldest of any kind of tree in Israel?
I believe it is. Yeah, you
Oh,
can.
no.
You
Except for
can.
maybe the one in Jericho?
Yeah, maybe so. But
so one of, if you say one of,
yeah, it's
you're
one of
saying-
the oldest. And
Oh, some of the olive trees are...
yeah, some of the olive trees date back pretty far, but they're not as old as this one. Like at Gethsemane, those trees aren't this old, but they don't even claim it. They would claim it if
in
it
the
was.
desert where there's barely any water,
Right.
this thing is still
That's right.
living. Wow.
So this is
I think
people
that's
come here
quite
from all over.
significant
Oh, it's beautiful.
Now,
that
just so the
is-
garden team know, Dwayne said, you touch that tree, we go to jail.
Yeah.
Dwayne
Oh,
Coxon.
honey, you need to hear this.
So we do not touch that tree in any shape or form.
You touch the tree and you go to jail.
And these palm fronds have to stay here because they're keeping the water in.
Prune anything.
But the palm fronds have to be this side of the sign, and they have to stay here.
And they're the fan palms.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
fence.
So we
I
don't
just
have to do
told
anything
Robert
with
we
it.
No.
can't touch
Just make
anything
sure
here.
that
And there's an ancient Bedouin legend, if you like ancient Bedouin legends, that the holy spirits, as they say, inhabit this tree. The holy spirits. So even anciently, people didn't take from its fruit. They didn't remove it, because of this legend associated with it.
So
So
it does grow a
you
fruit.
said
yeah, it
Oh, this
does.
is what's
There is
on the
fruit
film
on it.
yesterday morning. They talked about eating of the juju berries. One thing is, if there's children up here playing, you see them climbing the trees. It's just.
I've
so
seen.
awesome.
I've come up here, when I'm alone in the desert, kind of scoping out the place, and I've walked upon young lovers here and proposing and so forth. It's kind of a cool place, and of course, it scared me when I saw them. I didn't expect them to be here, but I think we were both surprised.
And one year when I was here, from Sapir, there's a certain age where the children receive their Torah. And then each mother made the child a Torah cover with her expression of her heart. And then they said a blessing. And that all happened in front of here. And I have pictures.
Oh yeah.
That was the most amazing experience to see the mothers blessing the children. And I think they're about 5th graders. And then they used that stone over there to lay out their lunch, Israeli style. All the mothers put out their stuff like it's a picnic table, and then they're running all over on top of everything. But it was a real rewarding day.
Yep. So here's our well. Now this well is installed later, but it's used for sort of an area of beautification and sort of to fit the motif. Now I don't know if it's hooked up. I'm going to try. Water comes out of this, fills this up to a certain point, and then it will flow down the aqueduct. It's part of a sort of a thing that we're trying to get working properly. So one day I had 2 Jewish guys come, and I was giving them this tour that I'm giving you. And Ofer, the crocodile farmer, has a dog by the name of Joke. And Joke is a very active young dog. He's no, what kind of dog? Jack Russell Terrier. And so he's pretty crazy. And I was standing about where you are, and I was telling the story, and I'm used to Joke being crazy. And for some reason, I'm talking, and I see this blur of fur jump, like he leapt over the wall, went straight to the bottom. I knew he was okay. He's chasing something in there, and so I keep telling my story, and the guys are like, "Whoa, what about the dog?" I said, "He'll be all right. He does this all the time. It's part of the show." And, so then I had to go get a ladder, and I lowered it, and I'm looking at the water, and I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to get down in there, but I had to go down in the water. I get the little wet dog, bring him out, and I go bring him back to Ofer, and I said, "Man, your dog's nuts. He just jumped off in this well," and he said, "All you had to do was tell him, Bo, come. He'll come up the ladder." And I said, "Man, he wasn't coming nowhere. He was frozen down there." But anyway, that was a bit of excitement. Thankfully, Joke is not going to do that today. Yeah.
So there's like this little shelf.
Yep.
So that is original.
No, this is all installed later. I don't know when it was actually built. I don't know, how far back it goes, but this is modern in the sense that you see the concrete, so it was built later at some point. Might have been in the British period,
Okay. But so you're saying the water? I don't know how water gets up into there.
We have a pump that pumps it through here. It flows. It fills to a certain level, and it feeds a drain that feeds the water through there.
Unplug it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just pumps it from here, and it recycles it and sends it back up. So we've had it working at times. It's not working right now, but it's part of what we're doing in the restoration. So people kind of get a feel. This place was anciently associated with water. People say, "Well, where's the water now?"
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you can think about is as these various moshavs, these various towns or little places with people living in them, come up and they need to water their plants. You've tapped into the water, the water table here in this area, and it's drawing and it's causing the desert to bloom, but it no longer feeds from this one location. But anciently, this was a spot. If you wanted water, you came here. That's why we have the fortress and, all these levels of occupation here.
So where do they think the water was coming out of the ground exactly?
It was from this huge water table that's
But
evidently.
do they know?
No,
They don't.
no. And
When I was here last year,
Yeah.
there was a couple, and they came up with some school kids actually, and she said in 1986 they used to swim around that jujube tree.
see, and I've heard the saying that the water was somewhere around the tree.
Yeah.
Well, there's a video with Perlmutter in the water.
Yeah, I saw it. I don't remember it being by the tree, but it could be. But there's quite a few stories about Rabbi Perlmutter and the water and how he prayed, and he says that the Lord told him where to dig, and so when the municipality wanted to get water, he told them where to go, and they went for days and days and no end, and the guy was about to give up, and he went to Perlmutter, and he told him, he said, go one more day. And they hit water, and according to Rabbi Perlmutter, it sprayed up like a geyser, and it was amazing. So,
And there is in fact, Abraham Cohen, he told you and Rivka that he remembers being here years ago when the water was here.
The guy you're going to meet on Monday, I took him the Hebrew and the English brochure and told him where I'm volunteering because he thinks it's really great to volunteer. And he picked it up and he looked at it and he went, 40 years ago when I came to Israel, I was sick. And I came to this place and I was healed.
yeah.
Wow. And I'm like, whoa, how's that happen? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing place. So we're going to walk back this way, and we'll go up, and I want you to just look at the different periods. Now remember, as you get higher, generally you're newer, right? More modern. Now if you look straight out from here, all of this was under. All of this was under the ground. No one could see any of this until the archaeology. Watch yourself on the edge there. But whenever people came here, in fact, some tour guides still explain this as a 2nd century Roman fortress because they don't know the full history. But notice this wall here, 10th century, 8th, 9th, 10th century in through here. I mean, this is fairly certain. But look, it goes there. Where does it go? There's dirt covering it. Now here we have a Roman cistern, if you look down in there for collection of water. But it's built on top of a 10th century wall, 10th century BCE. So we're looking at just layer upon layer. Construction, if I look here, these are sort of mud bricks, that were made at a later period. Whereas some of the older are the big boulder type stones. But notice at one point, here's the ground we're standing on. This extended and only bits and pieces of wall were sticking up. So it just took archaeology. You can imagine how many wheelbarrows of loads of dirt it took to get it to this point. And there's you could spend a lifetime with full volunteer staff and never fully expose the magnitude of this place. So as I look out now, if you're oriented, this is the gate system that we walked through, kind of where I'm pointing. The original fortress, remember the old wall, would have extended under this in a square type shape, and then it was expanded to 100 meters by 100 meters. As we walk out, I'll show you the walls of that. But each level is just covering a previous level. All right. Now, the British, during the British occupation, the British period, when they gained control of this area, after World War I, and the British took responsibility for this particular area, which was then known as Palestine. We can talk about the history of that later. This was an outpost for them as well. It was a military garrison. And so this building was originally a British building. They used it, among other things, for a jail. Notice the bars on the windows? Now, when Simca Perlmutter came, he made this building his synagogue. And so now we've kind of got it set up as a museum dedicated to people, non-Jews primarily, who were interested in the establishment of the state of Israel. So walk with me inside. We'll go in what we call the British building.
Now, was this brought here, or it was actually found here?
It was here. No, it was
here.
Well, it was put up by the British. The British built it.
What year?
Anywhere from, see we have the dates from 1919 to 48.
Okay.
So sometime in the early 1900s it was built.
Between the wars.
Yep,
Yeah.
between the wars.
At the end of World War One.
Yep.
And so it's been standing here since
Yep,
then, huh?
been standing here and used
Wow.
for various purposes.
Okay, Sally would like this.
So we'll let everybody file in and I'll just kind of point out a few things. So what we wanted to do with this place is sort of use it as a way to preserve the history of Israel, because our tour today has shown you and is showing you sort of a history of the ages from the biblical period all the way up through the modern era. Once you get into what we call the Zionist, where people are seeking the establishment of the state of Israel, the various people, I think, were used by God to bring this to pass. It's going to happen no matter what, if God intends it to happen, is my belief. But certain people were swayed, were moved, if you will, moved by the Spirit of God to bring this to pass. And you can kind of look around. Ord Wingate. I mean, if you're a reader and you don't know some of these people, these are excellent people to look for biographies on. Lord Balfour, November the 2nd, 1917, issues the famous Balfour Declaration, where he says that he believes that Britain should sponsor basically a Jewish state. And that paved the way. Although the British later sort of turned out to turn coat against the state of Israel, and even today they often vote against Israel or abstain. But at one time God used them mightily in the establishment of the state of Israel. Allenby, the famous Allenby Bridge. Allenby walks into the old city in 1917, sort of a triumphal entry, sort of an amazing story if you study Allenby. T.E. Lawrence, right? Lawrence of Arabia. Here's his story. You can just kind of walk around and look. Eliezer ben Yehuda, he restores the language of Hebrew as the language of the land of Israel. So all of these people are key people in the history. I'm very proud of David Horowitz, he was the founder of United Israel World Union. That's the organization that I work for and that I teach through, United Israel World Union. He believed, among other things, that scattered throughout the nations, according to the prophets, are a group who, though unknown to them, maybe, are actually Israelites, just like Jewish people, that they are from the tribe of Ephraim. So, David Horowitz, United Israel World Union. It was founded in 1944, so we're a 76-year-old organization that teaches from the Hebrew Bible with a message based in the Hebrew prophets and holds as a central tenet the restoration of Judah and Ephraim. So you can take some time and read through these. And we have one more period to go through, which is very important, and that's the Israelite period, where the Israelis actually took control, and guess what they used it for? An outpost. Significant strategic place. So we're going to walk over and take you through our bomb shelter. To come here, on different field trips and so forth. And we want to connect the Israelis to their history, both biblically and throughout the modern era. And so this is a nice place to do it, because we can bring them in and we show them all the prime ministers and all the presidents of Israel. And then behind you on the wall, you'll see Dr. Dwayne Coxon, the president of Blossoming Rose. These are people who've done their work and actually been used to beautify this area. The archaeologist in the middle is Yigal Yisrael. He was the primary Israeli archaeologist who supervised the dig here in those seasons that we talked about. Simcha Perlmutter was the rabbi who founded Ir Obot, this particular settlement, if you will. And so his story is there. And then, of course, the song that I taught you last night is here on the wall. Recently, I was leading a group through here on a previous trip, and these Israelis were here, and I was telling them the story about the song. And so one of them said, "Sing the song." So I did the song, and this man began to cry, like just tears and sobbing. And and I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, when his mother came here from Lithuania, and she was going through a school, you go through an ulpan to learn the language, to orient you to the land and the people, and he said that was a song that they taught his mom. So he learned that song as a little boy. So it's evidently a pretty popular folk song in Israel, this song from Isaiah 35. So it's Isaiah 35 is very much a part of your experience here. You notice that it's also associated with healing. Isaiah 35 talks about the lame will walk, and and all these passages in Isaiah 35. It's funny, those of you who are Christians who are familiar with the New Testament, when John the Baptist is in prison and he sends a message to Yeshua, to Jesus, he asks, "Are you the one, or should we look for another?" You know that his response, to go back to John, partially quotes Isaiah 35. Think about it. He quotes this idea that the lame will walk and so forth. Well, he's not getting all that from Isaiah 61. It's coming from Isaiah. It's a blend of prophetic text. So I feel that this place is not only special in a spiritual renewal sense, but I do believe in physical healing. I think that there are some things that can happen here. And so it's a very special place. So think about that while you're here.